Hello and welcome to the Comic Conspiracy episode 543 for the week of what we are recording a little late this week, Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022. We'll talk all about that in a second. My name is Ryan Higgins. Who's here this week?
Brock Sager.
Kevin.
And Charlie.
Hey, look at that.
Ryan, you better cut in some applause.
Toby was supposed to be here. I don't know where he is. It's Toby. He said he could be on because we're recording on Tuesday. Where is he? Who knows? It's Toby. I never expect anything from Toby. We love you, Toby.
Did you message him on Facebook and such?
I put it in the group where everyone can see it.
There's nowhere for him to lay down in a digital space. We need to start doing this in the metaverse with Oculus.
At 11:30 tonight, he'll message me and be like, "You guys still recording?"
You didn't tell me any details, Ryan Higgins. F you, Ryan Higgins.
No.
You didn't want me
along the lines of the way I normally make sure that I'm around is you like the story, and then we'll keep sending you. So and so has posted a comment. Well, he didn't like the story, so he's not going to get the comment stuff. So you're counting on him.
He should
be aware. It's 9 p.m.
He should. See, I
just gave it away. All our listeners know exactly the time we're recording.
Hashtag not my problem. Okay. Anyway,
hashtag tell me about some of your problems.
We have a massive amount of stuff to talk about this week. I don't know what we're going to get to because we really have one major topic, obviously. Next week is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. The week after, we're probably going to skip because I'm going to be out of town. This week, we're recording late because I was out of town. This weekend, we're in Disneyland. Hooray!
We'll just push it to Tuesday again.
Oh, God. No, I can't. It's like I'm dying to be here, but we have to record this week. We have to because of some of the news. Our store was broken into on Sunday. I was dealing with all that all Monday and a little bit today. Literally talking to the police 10 seconds before recording this podcast. Everyone's fine. Store's fine. Guy got almost nothing. He was caught. Broke into a couple stores. They got him casing out another place. So such a nightmare. Come back from my vacation just to get a call at 3 a.m. The store alarm's going off. Free Comedy Days this weekend. I'm out of town next weekend.
Mouse finally came in.
Our shipment of Mouse.
Some of our shipment of Mouse.
Hundreds of copies we were waiting for arrived. So now Brock's got projects for days.
Excuse me for a second. I'm going to go shoot myself off of.
Oh, God. I spent all day not only just working on this week's new comics, which is a pretty good amount, but also processing like 300 copies of Mouse to ship out. What happened? I used to have time. It's out of control. I got no time for anything. We did Geekbox last night.
You took a vacation. Whenever you take a vacation, you should expect you're going to be screwed when you get back.
Just 10 times as much work when I get back. I have what do we have? 20 boxes of toys in the back room that we've received over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, the last 2 weeks.
I go into our back room and I'm like, oh look, the port of LA shit back here, right? Like Mattel was like, oh yeah, Marvel Legends. Here's 6 months of it in 2 weeks. Forget another store. Forget another warehouse. I don't know. I don't know what the hell to do. It's just out of control. Everything it's just madness. I'm gonna record this podcast, post it, and pass out, and hopefully wake up tomorrow. But I had to make sure we recorded this week. I had to make sure Kevin was here. Had to make sure Charlie was here because not me. It's
specifically
it's okay.
Kevin and Charlie, and they're on a bit of a time crunch, so we're not going to waste any more time. Because of all the news that happened this past week, there was one very, very big news story, which we'll get to, and I know we have a lot to talk about. I don't know how much more we're going to get to past this because obviously it's a big topic. But here we go. Legendary comic book artist and writer, but mostly artist, Neal Adams passed away. Seemingly, I didn't even know he was sick at the age of 80. So we'll a little bit of info, a lot to say. He passed away on April 29th, which was that, Friday? Yeah, so Friday afternoon. I was in Disneyland and I was like, my Facebook, the little bit of social media I still look at was like, all of a sudden everyone had posted this. I was like, oh God, well, Obviously spent a lot of time talking about George Perez over the last couple of weeks and months with his cancer. And so I didn't. Neal Adams died from complications from sepsis, which is something that you can get when you're fighting off another infection. So I don't know. I don't pass that. I don't know what else happened to him. Well, I don't know if anyone has.
He was in the hospital last year as well with complications from sepsis.
Okay.
And it was touch and go last year. And he was public about this. He told the whole story.
I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
Not COVID related or anything, right? This is just from some other infection he had. So, I don't know if there's any more specific info out there. I've read a few of the news articles, and that's really the only thing that's that was mentioned. Died at the age of 80. And Neal Adams is such a large and unique figure in the comic industry, and controversial is maybe not quite the right word, but it's kind of the tale of like almost like two different guys. Let's start with kind of more of his legacy and history, and get into some modern day stuff as time goes on. But I was thinking about it, and whenever people say, "Oh, your favorite comic artist or the best comic artist," talking about Western stuff here. If someone said, "Oh, my favorite comic artist is Neal Adams," I don't think I'd blink. If someone said the best comic artist is Neal Adams, I probably also wouldn't blink. I think these are pretty easy opinions that any comic fan, especially a superhero comic fan, could hold. The amount of work he did was kind of minimal at the end of the day. He wasn't as prolific as someone like Jack Kirby. He didn't do a ton of interior work. Some of these guys that just work for 20, 30, 40 years doing a monthly comic or two monthly comics. Neal Adams very specifically a little bit like Steranko.
Yeah.
Obviously more prolific, but
modern day would be like J. Scott Campbell.
Maybe. Yeah. I guess he did a lot of covers, right? Back in the 70s.
Like he did, they start out, they did some interior work, but they couldn't keep up with it. So they ended up doing covers.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's just the quality of his work or the intricacy of his work or what, but he did, he had pretty lengthy runs on Batman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern. He did his own creator-owned stuff in the 80s. Obviously, he did a good run on X-Men, a little bit of Avengers. So he did have big runs on. He had some very significant runs on comics. But yeah, he's not a guy that was doing. He's not Kirby. He wasn't doing 3 issues a month or anything like that. That was just never Neal Adams. But it's not. Again, if someone says they're their favorite artist or the best artist, I wouldn't necessarily disagree. Potentially one of the most important artists in the comic industry, just for what he did outside of just the artwork, and we'll get more into all the things he did for the people of the industry as we go on here. Arguably, one of the probably top 2 most important Batman artists of all time, top 3 most important Batman artists of all time. One of the most, influential comic artists of all time. Everyone from Bill Sienkiewicz and Frank Miller that he literally trained to Jim Lee and everyone that came after. All those 80s, late 80s, early 90s guys, they all learned by tracing and copying Neal Adams. It's when you look at the body of his work and his importance in the industry, it is really hard to say there's many more artists out there that were as important and influential as Neal Adams. I have stuff to say later about the more modern Neal Adams. There's some, like I said, I feel like this is kind of a story of two different people. I don't want to shy away from that either. I have stuff to say. We'll get to that later. But Brock, you were absolutely more than welcome to throw your whatever you want to say in here. I know you're not that you don't like him, but Kevin and Charlie specifically are very big Neal Adams fans. So I want to get their takes and stories here too, Brock, and then we will get to you. I'm not intentionally trying to blow you off. I really wanted Kevin and Charlie to be here because they have a lot more to add to this conversation than I do.
No, I'm split like you. So
yeah. Well, I think to a little bit, a lot of people have two separate opinions on Neal Adams, and we'll talk about that as we go. But let's focus on the legacy, the best stuff first, and we'll kind of go from there. Kevin, why don't you say a couple words?
Okay. Well, there's the objective, what I would say, and then there's the personal. So I'll just go with the objective because that's what you were kind of doing at the beginning. Yeah. So when you say somebody could tell you he's their favorite comic artist and you wouldn't blink, and somebody could tell you he's the best comic artist and you wouldn't blink, I'm going to be the second person here. And I'm going to tell you, look, we could argue Jack Kirby, Will Eisner, other people may be better sequential storytellers as far as like comic book stories. But if you just say the greatest talent in the history of the medium, I will have that argument 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. It's him. And the difference is, and people who are only going to know the modern version and maybe have seen like reprints of his old stuff, what you have to remember is, judging by the second Neal Adams you brought up, this guy was Bob Dylan, Elvis Presley, the Beatles. It's not often you can say that somebody comes into an artistic medium and single-handedly changes the medium. And it is different after they have arrived than it was before. Yes, Steranko, but I think the difference is before Neal Adams, it was a cartoonist medium. And after Neal Adams, it was an artist medium. Because he came from advertising. He's a classically trained artist who also drew some comics. And so that's why when you look at, I mean, maybe the stories don't have the power that they did back then, but you open up that Green Lantern number 76, the one where Green Arrow is shooting through the lantern on the cover. Mm-hmm. And before that, there was X-Men, and he did some Brave and the Bold stories. And so just drop in anywhere in that timeline, and let's just say you're a kid or a college student or an adult or whatever, opening one of those comics then, it's a seismic change in an industry. And it's like Elvis Presley releasing Hound Dog. It's like the first time somebody hears Like a Rolling Stone. It's I Want to Hold Your Hand. It's like you can feel the earth move in the moment. You're not looking back at history. You're in history while it's happening.
Could you say that about Sandman? Neil Gaiman?
In a different way.
Well, I mean, Sandman's just a really good comic. I mean...
Yeah, it's not as immediate.
But so, yeah, I mean, I could share some personal memories of Neal, but I'll pass it off to Charlie. I would just say this as my final thought on kind of the objective one is if you say, okay, give me 4 heads carved in stone of the most important people
Mount Rushmore?
The Mount Rushmore, not your favorite, but your objective comics Mount Rushmore. Who would be the 4 heads? Look, I'm happy to have an argument about 3 of those heads. But anybody who says Adams shouldn't be one of the 4 doesn't know what they're talking about. Not only his importance at the time, but all of the people who came after him, like Sienkiewicz, Alan Davis, Frank Miller, like the list goes and goes and goes. Even modern people like Clay Mann, maybe not directly influenced by Adams as a youth, but influenced by the influences.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it still trickles down.
Yeah. Everything, for good or bad,
Yep.
that came from Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee in the 90s, Image Boom, that is, they were raised on Neal Adams. That is their number one influence without a secondary.
And I'll tell you that. It's not us speculating.
The UK people, Alan Davis, Brian Hitch, all those guys, that generation, less so the earlier guys, but that 80s, late 80s, early 90s UK guys, all those guys, they came from Neal Adams. Like, and that is, you could very easily argue Brian Hitch might be the most influential comic artist of the 2000s to now. You can kind of goof on it now, but Ultimates was a dramatic shift in comics when that book came out. It's hard to sort of picture that now, but Ultimates, I'm going to say not maybe as important as Neal Adams, but it had a similar effect on everything that came after it, and everything he does in there comes from Neal Adams. So he modernized it, but it's very similar in language, in artistic language. So, yeah. And we're obviously gonna have the big Batman conversation after this, Charlie. I'm not gonna leave you out. We will talk. We'll talk Batman here in a second. But why don't you give us a couple of minutes here, because we all know your love of a couple characters that he is so directly responsible for.
To me, that's kind of the distinction. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like Kevin, calling him the best artist ever, my favorite artist, just because I'm well documented some artists that I prefer. But that being said, if you pick certain characters, like if you say picture Batman in your head, I'm going to picture Neal Adams Batman. It's just sort of the way it is. A lot of that stuff kind of imprints on you. And I know, especially as a kid, a lot of the stuff that I read was very influential from him. So I can even say in a lot of ways that my love of comics probably came from more reading his stuff than to the stuff that preceded it, and even to some degree the stuff after it. But no, I totally understand what you mean about the duality. But at the same time, like, so many of his covers and so much of his work in the industry, like if you just talk to a comic person and you say, this character, picture a cover, if they're a longtime fan, they are likely to pick one of his covers for many characters.
And, obviously, Ra's al Ghul, is one of his most famous creations, and is there a co-creation, and once you get into the 70s, comics were pretty set, right? Yeah. It's hard to think of how many new characters that really become institutions, that really become bedrocks of an industry, of the company, have come in the 70s, 80s now. Oh, they exist, sure. Wolverine, right? I mean, obviously there's some of them, but it's hard, right? There's a lot fewer. The 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the vast majority of the characters that we follow today were created at that point. So, he came in, and not only, this will lead into the Batman conversation. He not only dramatically changed comics, he created and co-created very important characters that are still, again, I know there's a little funkiness in the way like Batman the Animated Series was released, but On Leather Wings, the Man-Bat episode, that's the first like real episode of that show, right?
Yeah.
Man-Bat, that's a Neal Adams creation. So like, Ra's al Ghul is probably second only to the Joker of like used villains in bigger Batman stories, right? Yeah, Riddler's around, Two-Face is around, Clayface is around, yada, 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 yada. But really, when it's like, no, this is like the Batman story. This is the big Batman event. It's so cool, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty unreal.
It's not shocking that that's the character Nolan chose to launch his trilogy with stuff.
Yeah.
Don't forget. I know you're on Batman, but don't forget to mention Jon Stewart.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I will go through. I was going to pull up a list.
Okay,
there's a lot to talk about. But Green Arrow, Green Lantern, everything else he did outside of that, we could talk you could do an entire episode about all those books, but it's hard to put an importance on anything he did more than him and Denny O'Neil's run on Batman, because this 1973, for most people listening, a little bit before our time, not a lot of us were around to pull these books off the shelf, or even have been around for 4 or 5 years prior to that to kind of have seen what Batman had become, let alone conscious enough to actually understand this stuff. But from a historical point of view, the Batman books had been kind of bad for decade, but goofy. The show, while a mega hit in the 60s, kind of ruined the comics a little bit.
Well, you're talking about the checkered era.
I mean, this is like a historical view. This is sort of opinions, modern opinion on past stuff.
No, you're correct. The Batman stuff went through a kind of comedic-ish, more slapstick kind of stuff, and
that's all of DC, really, right? Through the 50s and 60s and into the 70s. It's
so I would definitely say that it got stale because of how long that's. But yeah, to me there's still something special about that era of DC Comics and stuff, where it was a little more lighthearted and that kind of stuff. But obviously, we've talked about the necessary shift comics had to go through to kind of get away from that.
Yeah.
Didn't we get like Rainbow Batman out of that?
Oh, sure. That's all. That's 60s, right? That's all that era.
Was Batmite at that time?
But imagine the comic, the audience listening. Imagine the Joker was a throwaway character that they never really used anymore.
Yep.
That hadn't been in a comic in 5 years, I believe, is the time frame. I believe, maybe someone can double check this. I believe it is prior to Batman 251. He had not shown up in a comic in about 5 years, which, Kevin, can you imagine 5 weeks without the Joker?
I'd say we bring back that business model today. Let's go 5 years with no Joker.
I believe I read that he had not been in, that the Joker had not shown up in a Batman comic for about 5 years.
And I believe Two-Face hadn't been in a Batman comic since the Golden Age.
Yeah, and so in the 60s, a lot of those characters get sort of reintroduced, right? The Joker obviously showed up regularly enough, but he was a goofy nothing. It was just another random character.
I can't stress enough that when we're talking about not being in the comic for 5 years, that's like 60 stories.
Yeah. Not 6 stories, right?
Yeah.
Not 12 stories. Yeah. Well, more than that, right? Because again, if he was in Detective, he wasn't in any of the other titles. Yeah, I could be off. I believe I read the Joker had not appeared in a story in like 5 years. So roughly something like that. Brock, I think is looking it up, see if he can find it. So Batman 251 comes out, Denny O'Neil and Neal Adams, and everyone knows the cover. It's a Joker standing over the city with Batman attached to like a playing card on the cover. It's one of the most homaged, parodied covers, reprinted covers. It's on posters. It's on the cover of Omnis. It's it's been reprinted as a facsimile. It's this cover if you've seen it. It'll probably be the podcast cover for this episode.
I got it. In Batman, the last one he was in was 213 before 251. So, and that was August of 1969.
Okay, so like 4 years. Yeah. So like 4 years. Okay, yeah, so close. Okay, so close. And then here comes this issue, which not only is incredibly well written and incredibly well drawn, but brings back the Joker redesigned for the modern day at the time, and fucking terrifying. Mm-hmm. Again, for 1973, it's not Joker with his face ripped off like in New 52. It's not the Joker, right? I mean, clearly we are looking at this as the historical point of view of when the book came out. But if I'm going to assume if you were a kid reading this issue at this time, this is not a Joker you've ever seen before. They completely brought back that nightmarish terror Joker from the Golden Age that was not really well defined, and now we have, again, arguably the best artist in the industry working on what would become the biggest character of all time with the biggest villain of all time, right?
I mean, this was the criminal one, right? Like from Three Jokers.
Yeah. I mean, this is the yes, that's
the coat. That's the pop purple coat. Like,
yeah, this is the same Joker that would be in Killing. I mean, the Joker's a Joker, but this yes. version of the Joker by Neal Adams would become the Joker to today, yes. for the most part. I mean, just imagine that. Just imagine being in a world where you've kind of seen like the second birth of, again, arguably the biggest villain of all time in Western comics, right? It's his entire run, which again wasn't super long, but significant enough. Recreates, again, arguably the biggest villain ever, and creates one of the biggest villains in Ra's al Ghul in the last 50 years. That just doesn't happen often. They took the goofy 60s show and made it dark and scary, and Batman wasn't a goofball. He was the detective, right? And that this was just a radical recreation of Batman and the Joker that is what we know today. Everything you know about Batman and the Joker comes from this run. This was everything is pulled from this. It's a little bit like Alan Moore Swamp Thing, how you basically throw out everything prior, and Alan Moore Swamp Thing is everything you know about the character to this point. This is the same sort of thing where it's like, but it's Batman and the Joker, which who had been around at that point for 35 years or something like that. Yeah. It just very, very significant, and the influence of everything that came after comes from here. So again, Kevin, I know you're a fan. Charlie, this era, this is all the Ra's al Ghul stuff. So whatever you guys got to say.
I discovered all this stuff way later through like those Treasury comics.
Right. I mean, most people our age and under weren't alive, literally.
Well, the other way that I found, that's how I found Neal's comics, but the way I found his art was through licensing art. Like I had on my bedroom door as a kid, I want to say in my memory, it's maybe 8 to 10 DC Comics stickers, most of them about the size of like a tea saucer. Except it had one piece that was the size of a dinner plate, and that was a Neal Adams Batman. And I saw Neal Adams Batman literally every day of my life from about age, whatever age I would have been young enough I could have gotten away with putting stickers all over a door and not gotten in trouble. So let's say 6 to 7 to maybe 14. I saw Neal Adams Batman every day. But also the other thing was, like the old Tarzan paperback books with the Neal Adams painted covers were so awesome. As a kid, you just look at those covers anybody hasn't seen them, just Google Neal Adams Tarzan. You'll see what I'm talking about. They're incredible. And then here's the other sweet Neal Adams pain, and then I'll tag off to Charlie, is first starting to collect back issues and first like comic stores coming in my life and being able to go in and like, bin dive and get a bunch of comics for $1, $2 cover sticker price. Neal Adams did so many great DC covers in the 70s that I would just see the covers because they'd be bagged and boarded. You just see the cover and go, holy shit, I got to have this. I got to have this. I want all of these. And then you get it home and it's like Dick Dillon inside. And this is no offense to Dick Dillon. I would hire him in a half a second if I was running a publishing house. But I mean, you get set up with a Neal Adams cover and then you open it and it's, quote, regular comic book art. That was a sweet kind of heartache that I can still remember the distinct feeling of on opening those comics. So those are my earliest memories of Neal, even aside from reading the stories, which came a little bit later, was just being exposed to the pure like majesty of the art.
Charlie, talk about this Batman run a little bit. I know you talked a little bit, but let me know if you got anything else.
I mean, in response to what Kevin was saying there, like I totally get where he's coming from, but I have no clue exactly where my introduction to his art would have been, other than the Tales of the Demon trade, because I was glued to that book. Like, there's a handful of books growing up that I read so much that they were practically falling apart by the time I was a teenager and that kind of thing. And that was like the old like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle collections when the show was big and you could buy those everywhere. And a Tales of the Demon trade that my mom bought for me from like a used library sale. And like every trip we would take, like I had already read it at home, but if I was going to grab something to read while we were driving somewhere or whatnot, I would grab that book. And I will always kind of think back to just how it doesn't happen enough in comics today for me. But I remember those things where you would read something on the page and your mind would just sort of explode with how much sense that makes and how amazing that is. And you would kind of like instantly. I get that with Jeff Johns sometimes, where he'll do something where it exceeds my expectations, but a lot of that feeling originates from that trade for me, and therefore from him, because there was a lot of stuff around that run and the creation of Ra's al Ghul and some of the stuff that I read after that and that kind of stuff, where you go in kind of not knowing anything about this new character he's created and that kind of stuff. And then he just shows up in the Batcave. And as a kid, that image and everything that they did with that just kind of like seared in my brain as all this makes perfect sense. I totally understand how he got here. It's so crazy that it took him to figure it out at that point. And there was something it rang true. And that's kind of goes back to what you're talking about in terms of just those stories when you got the reintroduction of the Joker and you got the introduction of Ra's al Ghul and you got the bringing back some of these sort of classic characters. It would be very easy for somebody to be like, that's not my Joker, or that's not my Two-Face, especially given what had come before, but it all kind of rang true still. Like, it could be vastly different, but it still had that ring of truth to it that allowed it to sort of last this long.
Just I'm going through some cover galleries of Neal Adams here, and there's everything from Adventure Comics and Superboy and Phantom Stranger, and X-Men and Batman. He did hundreds of covers, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe not hundreds, 100 plus easy. Obviously it's something you realize, but you realize it more when you're looking at a big gallery of it all together like this. It's not that no one did this, but his characters are so large on the cover they're so not just standing around posed, right? It's there's no dead space. There's action on the cover, which is a lot harder than I think it looks. There's
I'll take that a step further. Like, I remember feeling the same way about statues for a long time, where it would just be like just people standing there. But that idea of taking art and capturing like a moment, and that kind of stuff, where it got you excited about what you were going to read in the comic.
Well, yeah, he's and then again, obviously, I don't think. I mean, obviously, you go back to the Spirit and Will Eisner and other people that would play with the logos and things. So, like he created this or anything like that. But he definitely has the art exceeds the page in a lot of this. It goes off the page. It goes over the logos. It's bigger than it almost should be. It's and not like it's some weird close up that just doesn't look right. It's
layered,
exciting, and it's just if you take other comic art from that time period, you look at the covers and you look at his covers, like Kevin was saying before, it's you've never seen this with other books. It's dynamic. It's an actiony, adventure-y pose of these characters that you're just not going to see with this level of kind of fluidity from anyone else. And it's and the characters are big. They're huge. And again, look at Frank Miller, right? You know that Dark Knight page, right? That cover where Batman's just like kind of crouched down, like ready to burst through the seams of the comic cover, right? That's how all these covers feel, that they are just like the page almost cannot contain the characters. It's this is nothing. This is not a new comment, but it is when you really look at just a big chunk of his cover art. It literally that Superman cover, right, where he's burst into the kryptonite. All right, I mean that is indicative of all these covers, just how they're just so more energetic than everything else at the time, even if they're kind of more goofy characters. Or
as long as you've got covers open, and I know this is good radio, but anybody listening can do this too. Because I'll tell you one of my low-key favorite Neal Adams covers ever, and you can Google it right now as long as you're on covers. It's Superman 243. It breaks almost every rule that an editor would lay down for a superhero comic book cover. But look at the cover of Superman 243. That is one of my favorite covers ever. And if an unknown artist came in and said, here's what I'm thinking of doing, the editor at that time was probably Julie Schwartz on that book, would say, get the F out of here.
Yeah.
But look at it. It's like power. It's amazing.
Superman is kissing a woman, and she has her back to the camera. And that's what I mean. His head is over the Superman logo. His cape is literally on the spine, right?
Right.
Like if you look at some of these details, that was not common. It happened, but it wasn't like a regular thing quite yet. Those little details where it feels like Superman is literally going to break through the side of the comic on this. It is a very extremely non-traditional cover.
Yeah, you can't see the hero.
Right.
Like he's not doing anything super. You can't even see him.
I think we're all checking out the ass on that cover.
Well, like I said, very non-traditional for Superman. Right. Look, I'm going through this.
He did that for Wonder Woman 49.
Yeah. This is like a recreation.
Superman and Wonder Woman.
Yeah. All those Batman covers. Just again, all those wraparound covers. Superman 252 with all the flying heroes. I picked up a copy of. I have it with my stack of DC Comics
like all my superhero action figures. Let me find the cover. What the hell is it? The 100-page super spectacular number 6. It's like all the Golden Age characters or like Silver Age and JSA.
A class photo, right? Where they're all
yeah. Now that is probably the most boring of his covers, right?
But it's amazing. Yeah.
But it's amazing because he never does stuff like this. He never does the characters posed staring straight forward, but he did on this, and it's a wraparound cover, and it's like it's unique even for him. But his other versions where he did these wraparound covers, all the characters are flying in these very dynamic poses, or they're all just, other things are going on. But even when he has to draw the JSA just kind of and the JLA just kind of standing there, they're still going over the logo a little bit and half off panel or half off the side of the comic. They're larger than they would be if anyone else drew this comic, right?
Even his X-Men one, like
all the X-Men covers
where it's that character that's grabbing the X-Men logo itself,
right. That is, and again, you would see this on occasion, but it was not. It was. I feel like today it's a very common to be interacting with the logo or to kind of be going over the logo. That's like an 80s, 90s thing. Like it became pretty standard. He didn't really create this. Again, other people had done this prior to him, but this is one of many things that he influenced. Just how comic covers could be more dynamic than Superman standing there, just kind of looking at Lois and maybe half-hearted punch to Brainiac. Like it's just there's dynamicism and the characters are bent and it's way more action than you would have seen on most comic covers up to this point.
Well, and like a lot of his covers that have that like kind of ghostly or spooky like thing, like
those covers are great. All the Zorro stuff are fantastic.
Like Batman 227. Where it's that kind of ghost-like Batman just kind of hunched above a man, like
the Gothos Manor,
yeah. That's again one of the best covers of all time,
right? Like, and again, it's subtle, but his ears go above the logo, right? Like the moon is behind him, even though he's super big, right? You get that layer of fog or whatever that just adds to it, and so like, and there's action on the front cover. There's a woman being chased, like. There's just, and he plays with like perspectives and all of that stuff. So, there's just he did something right, and it just caught me. It was like wildfire.
Yeah. Now I know Kevin and Charlie cannot stay super late tonight. I know Charlie's going to go pretty soon here. I got a couple things still to talk about here. We'll kind of try to get through this as quick as possible. The other big influence of Neal Adams is literally on how the industry works. There are sort of two big events that he spearheaded and were really responsible for changing. One of them was getting artwork back to the creators, most importantly, Jack Kirby. So if you can believe it, comic companies would publish a comic, take the art, and generally chuck it in the trash bin. Yep. Maybe they'd hold on to it for a little while. They'd give it out to people that visited the office. But normally, the comic was printed. I know Charlie, big Doctor Who fan, knows all about media companies tossing the work after it's done, because what's a graphic novel? What's a digital comic? What's streaming? These aren't things that exist. We show the thing once, we sell the comic once, that's it. It's done, all right? We're never going to do this again. It doesn't matter. It's just paper. Nobody cares, all right? So the entire comic industry and original art would not
all those sales, when we talk about the stuff selling for $250,000, a lot of this comes from Neal Adams actively getting the artwork back to the creators. He petitioned very strongly to get this stuff back so the creators, the artists, would get their artwork back and have a way to resell this stuff. And, you know, they did the art. It's theirs to do what they want to want with at the end, and preserve the artwork or resell it, do whatever they wanted to.
You don't get those fantastical oversized art editions from IDW. You know,
Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, may have heard of them. Co-created Superman, pretty important, pretty important characters, and pretty important people in the comic industry. Most people probably know the story. Sold the idea of Superman for nothing to National Periodics. What were they called at the time? Were they still called that at the time? I don't remember what they actually called. This is well before the company was called DC Comics.
You could just abbreviate it to National.
What would they sell for, like $500 or something? Is that what they sold the concept for? You know, they worked on the character for quite a while and were well paid. But of course, when the serial started and the show, you know, all the radio dramas and all that stuff, right? They get nothing because it's they created the character, but it was sold to work for hire, and that's, well, it wasn't work for. I mean, I technically work for hire. I mean, I don't know what the specific. I mean, they sold the character to them. They didn't create it for DC. They created the character, shopped it around. Nobody wanted it. National bought it. There you go. I guess work for hire. I don't know what they specifically call that, but they sold it. And then time passed. They weren't able to keep working in comics. You know, their writing and art style was old, and so they didn't get work. And they National Allied Publications. There you go. I know they've changed names multiple times through this. So.
Nap.
You know, so these guys created, you know, they created lots of characters. A lot of Legion superheroes were created by Siegel, and, you know, various other characters were created by, you know, by the pair of them while they were working at DC originally, and then when they came back. But there was no royalties. They didn't get anything. So again, Neal Adams, it was before Superman the motion picture, right?
Well, or getting them a credit in the movie was one of his missions also in this time.
Right.
That on-screen credit. I mean, you can also thank Jeanette Kahn and others, but I'm saying he was the driving force for that.
They went bankrupt. They were like living in.
Yep.
Well, they were. I got
the total. They were
poor. I think it was like $500 or something like that. $200, $300. It was nothing. I mean, it was a lot in like 1938.
They were paid $130, which would be equivalent to $2,500 in 2021 for their work. It was about $10 per page.
Sure. For that original story. So yeah, you know, of course, we're seeing this now where, you know, hey, I created, you know, you took my entire Jason Aaron run of Thor, made a movie of it. Marvel gives me $5,000. They don't even give you a ticket to the premiere. Hooray. I mean, it's not like we're still fighting the same fight, but specifically for Siegel and Shuster, he went to bat. He got them their credits in the comics that last to this day, credited in the movie, and got them paid. Mm-hmm. And DC, until more recently, was far and away the leader in royalties for creators.
Well, they had Vertigo too.
Later, but I mean, you know, from the 70s into the 80s and 90s, if you created characters, you got significantly more royalties than anyone else. Again, that has changed a little bit in recent years, unfortunately. But you know, yeah, Jeanette Kahn and shit.
Don't know who you're talking about. Berger?
head of DC for a while, wrote Legion, totally blanking on his name.
Paul Levitz.
Paul Levitz, thank you very much. Paul Levitz obviously very important in this, in his leadership role at DC. But all this started with Neal Adams for the most part. So he was the major influence
Neal was
to get creator.
Neal was the superstar, the public face. So
right.
All those people working behind the scenes is all well and good, but a big name with a big megaphone who can bring attention to it
and get the fans on the creator side.
Yes.
Well before Twitter, there was no Snapchat to jump into. There was no TikTok to jump into to make your case heard. But those fanzines, conventions, anyone that would listen, letter columns, he was pushing for this, and got it, right? And he eventually leaves, right? He eventually goes off. He leaves DC. He does his own thing for many years. There's what was it? What's the company he ended up making? A Continuity. Yep. He created like Bucky O'Hare. That was a legitimate big hit in the 80s. I mean, that was a cartoon, a video game. All those characters. He kept creating past his sort of the early heyday where he kept making big books. It's not like he stopped. He had just up. I mean, he worked for DC. He did so many stuff for DC and Marvel. Not so much long runs, but influential, important runs. Covers that everyone will recognize. Was very much the influence of a lot of artists in the 80s and 90s, and probably every Western comic artist gets something from him down the way, influence as you go back, right? I mean, there are very few superhero artists that don't get stuff from Neal Adams. So, and again, feel free. You guys could jump in if you got anything else to say as we kind of go around this. I think Charlie had to back off for a second. Hopefully he's able to maybe quickly rejoin us.
I'm still here for now. I'm going to be dropping off soon.
Fantastic. So for younger people and people that weren't around when this came out, and people like us who would have got into him in the 80s and 90s and a little bit later, there is sort of a, like we said earlier, kind of a second Neal Adams, and I don't bring this up. We've talked about this. This is not new. Kevin, we've talked about this at length. It's Comic-Con 2019.
Yep.
When you got your book signed by him, when you're the best, and you're the best, and you want to tell everyone you're the best, sometimes it doesn't come off the bat. Sometimes it doesn't come out great. This is not Neal Adams working in the industry. This is public convention, internet Neal Adams. It's kind of a different story.
He kind of turned it into the monster he railed against.
Well, no. He didn't. He's not like a corporate guy taking ownership of other characters. Nothing like that.
No, not that part.
He's just... Yeah. So you can kind of laugh because if you're going to see Neal Adams at a convention,
it's going to cost.
If you know this going in, you know what to expect, you were kind of prepared for his persona to the public, it might have been okay. The problem is I have countless customers and friends that interacted with him through conventions and through signings and events like that were really turned off by his persona, by his personality. And again, I think if you go in, Kevin, when you went in to get your book signed, you knew exactly what you were getting into.
Yeah.
And you could kind of laugh about it.
Yep.
And it was like what you expected and almost more. And you can maybe remind everyone. Charlie, I didn't mean to cut you off. Jump in here if you want.
I was just going to say, most of my experience, I would say, is more of a modern con versus like comic conventions were around for a long time before I started going to any comic convention, so I didn't necessarily get to see a transformation or whatnot. But at the same time, I don't disagree with anything that you said, and obviously I've had my own stories with him at conventions and that kind of stuff, because he was practically at every convention I ever went to.
Yeah.
But it's also one of those things where I have heard so many sort of horror stories from creators feeling like they were being taken advantage of by the people at conventions who they thought were fans, who just turned around and resold stuff and that kind of stuff, that I am curious.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious how much of this had to do in response to that, because especially in like the last 15, 20 years, when you talk about art and all that kind of stuff, like the market and what you get at conventions has changed so drastically from like the first con I went to now, that I can't even imagine a guy who goes to every convention like he does, or, well, not every convention, but you get what I mean. He was a staple at a lot of the conventions that I went to. He was always there. What that kind of atmosphere would do to you, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, when you're the best and you know it, you can charge, and you don't care if people pass, because you know there's 10 people behind them that are gonna pay top dollar for everything you did.
I'm not even saying that. I'm saying like there's a lot of people who are artists in the industry who talked about how they had to start raising their prices or had to start charging because of the way people were taking what they were doing. And
sure. No, I know, I totally understand. Yeah, and I think that's I don't know what he was like at a convention in 1974, but I know what he was like at a convention in 2004. You know, like it was he clearly, you know, he's not working regularly, so I'm sure I wouldn't say he needed the money. I mean, yeah, he probably does. He's an artist. You know, it's work.
He was still doing a lot of like storyboards and advertising work.
Okay, so
even in the later years.
Yeah, I'm not going to be like, oh, he was destitute. I don't think that was ever the case. But he was like, I do not give this away for free. I'm an artist. You pay me for my work. And I totally agree with that. I think, you know, the heyday of free con sketches is long over at this point, guys. Like, sorry, pay your artist, you know. So I'm not saying he's wrong, but if you went to see him without knowing who he was and how he was,
that was my experience.
I have endless stories of people that were just incredibly turned off by him.
It was when we were doing Big Wow.
Yeah.
Right. And I took a break from our table and I walked around, and he had like 4 tables in the corner.
Yeah, Brock, his con tables used to be nicknamed the Battleship.
Yeah. Yeah, they're humongous.
Yeah. And I'm like, I went, oh, Neal Adams. Oh, cool. He's over there. And I'm like, I'm looking around. I'm like, Jesus, like, because I had looked at other people's like stuff, and their prints were like this and this and this, and his were just astronomically asinine. And I'm like,
pretty expensive.
They were like super expensive, and I'm just kind of like, I'm looking around, and you know, I didn't take anything with me because I was shopping, because I was working. And he kind of just like, he goes, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "I'm just browsing, you know, checking everything out, you know." You're like, and he's like, "Yeah, okay." And he kind of just brushed me off. And I kind of was just, and then like, I think somebody had come up and was like wanting to buy something, and he was just kind of rude to them. And I was just like, okay, like, and I just left because.
And I've had bad con experiences with great creators, and I've had great con experiences with bad creators, or not bad creators, but you know what I mean, right? So there's always going to be things, but he was a character.
He was a character. Sure.
The best is Kevin's stories about people's reaction to his signature.
Well, that's right. Kevin, we told the story when it happened, but to give the people listening an idea of the personality, if you can relate your story about getting your book signed.
I'll give the short version.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, just also being at a con, gosh, it'd have to be in the 90s probably. I don't think I was ever at a con in the 80s, but in the 90s, I met him. I just walked up to him with I went to a bin. I saw he was there. I went to a bin, got a Green Lantern, Green Arrow book, walked up to him saying, "Hey, could you sign this?" And he happily did it. And it was a great experience. And I went on my way. Didn't charge me 10 cents. But I think a couple of things happened. I'm coming to the signature story. Is one thing that happened to him, if you want to say it this way, is back in 2019, the cover of that Joker's 5-Way Revenge sold at Heritage for $600K. The pre-auction estimate on that piece was $250K. It sold for $600, and that's 4 years ago. Or 3 years ago, before the insanity of the comic art market.
No, that's the start. That's the start.
I think when he saw that, it gave him a sense of, I'm worth more than what I'm getting, kind of thing. So Mike Royer tells a story about how Neal used to come up to him at every con that Royer was at and say, "You should double how much you're charging for a signature or a sketch or anything." Like, that was Neal saying he'd go around and try to get other creators to up their prices. And you might go, as a fan, what a dick. He's like squeezing all the fans. But look at it from his point of view.
And that's what I mean. Pay your artist. Yeah. Oh, they're worth it. Right. I'm not saying when I was younger, you don't have the money. You don't really understand. Right. They get paid, but you don't really realize it. But nowadays, the amount of people that are going to flip your stuff, the value of their signature, the value of the artwork, CGC, right? The whole game has changed.
Like Lou Ferrigno, when we had him, right? If you wanted something straight signed, it was more expensive than if you wanted it personalized.
Right. And when people, this is how these guys make their money, right? And I don't. He's not wrong. I think he was. So, you said 2019. I think go back to 20 years ago, and he was.
Oh yeah.
It was a similar sort of. He was doing this, and I think there's ways to do it. There's ways to. His way of doing it just rubbed a lot of people wrong. We talked about George Perez. I think if you poll the industry, not one person has one bad thing to say about George Perez. He never took a penny, but everything he did was for charity, right? And you had to pay, but he could have taken every penny of that, and I don't think anyone would have blinked. They still would have given him the money, charity or not. I think no one would have ever blinked at anything he said because he's nice and charitable and approachable and humble, and Adam's personality
is not that.
I literally have had multiple people have told me the same story of, hey, you've got these prints. They're $40 a piece or whatever. They're pretty expensive. Can I get 3 for $100 or whatever, oh, do you have a package deal? And he would have some comment of oh, if you get 3, they're actually $80 a piece. Some kind of jerky reply to that, right? Almost, whether it's a joke or not, I don't know. But and they were oh, and they just put the stuff down and walked away, right? Is that his personality? Is it a joke? Is it serious? My interactions with him have been very minimal, right? A couple times at a con, I never bought anything. I saw some interactions, but I didn't have any lengthy conversation with the guy. A lot of this comes secondhand from people, but this is the perceptive. Jesus Christ,
This is the perception that a lot of people have on him
but if you
in the modern day.
If you look at Kevin's DC history of the DC universe, people literally see tell them about what happens when people see his signature.
Well, okay, here's the short version of all this for new listeners. TM Bryce Larson. That book when did we get that? 2019?
Yeah.
So that book had been going with me to cons for over 10 years at that point, and I had
the history of the DC universe hardcover collection.
I had never paid for a signature in that book or in my life. I had a Strange Tales signed by Stan, Jack Kirby, and Dick Ayers. It cost me $0. I had never paid for a signature. I'm not talking about a sketch or a commission. I'm talking about somebody signing something. Yeah. I had never paid for that ever because I'd never been asked to. It's not like I go up to a table and somebody goes, "Oh, I charge $5," and I walk away. I had never encountered it until recent times, that phenomenon. So anyway, it's one of those things where, and Toby was egging me on, and I've told him many times he was right to do it. He was right. You can't have a history of the DC Universe book without Neal Adams in it. You just can't. So at this point, Neal's prices had gone from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40, and they were at 50.
And let's remind people too, the book you have has a no pun intended, a who's who of DC creators from the golden age to modern age that have signed this book. It's not like 3 people.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, you've got to be 100.
I think at 150 signatures now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Ryan, you and I were together, but we split off. You went to Bill Sienkiewicz's booth, if I'm remembering right, to stand in line. So I go to Neal's booth. There, he and his wife Marilyn are there. I've got to grit my teeth because I'm going from never having paid for a signature to suddenly paying $50.
Bend over, Red Rover.
Walk up, got my cash out, internally grimacing, but I know this is just a thing. And then he goes, "Well, where do you want me to sign it?" So it's the inside front cover. Nobody had signed there yet at this point. The inside front cover. He pulls out a Sharpie. I go, no. Like, this is one of those things where if you're paying $50, like, I want a signature. So he digs in his little zipper art pouch and comes out with a pen you could basically graffiti a building with. Like, I don't even know why you'd bring it to a con unless you're like coloring some giant piece that takes place at night. Why would you need this huge black pen? But there it was. And he goes, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yep, right there." Point to the center of the page. He goes, "You're sure?" I go, "Yes, right there." He goes, "Okay." Signs it this fat, giant signature. And as he's writing it, he goes, "Heh, heh, heh, heh. Let everyone else sign around me." Like that. Great. Paid him. Went on my way. Perfectly pleasant. And then what happened, was Brock was alluding to, is other people would see it, including Sienkiewicz's, who saw it that day, fresh when that ink was still smelly. That day we were at his table. I had just come from there. And he goes, "You know, if you go over to get Steranko to sign this, on this page, Steranko would have to sign it 1/2 inch bigger than Neal Adams." But anyway, so everybody, kind of people, newer creators would see that signature and kind of roll their eyes and chuckle. But my thing was always, I asked for that. It's not like he got that pen out on his own and did it.
Yeah, but he laughed about it.
Yeah, he totally laughed about it. And you know who the next 2 signatures on that cover after him? Jose Garcia Lopez and John Byrne. It's like my Hall of Childhood Heroes. That cover.
I'm surprised John Byrne wouldn't be like,
just cross it out.
It's one of those things where it's just like
dick measuring contest.
The other an addendum to that story. It's not about the signature, but during the
calling it now. Hour and 8 minutes in, Toby joins us. Hour and 8 minutes in, Toby joins us.
Just right after I mentioned his name, it's like saying Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
I was just going to say real quick, as an addendum to that signature, during my COVID art insanity, I thought, you know what? Neal Adams is in his upper 70s, and it's been one of my favorite, not my favorite artists, but one of them for my entire life. I should get a commission from him. So I did. And I had to call up Continuity to make a mailing arrangement with them, which I hadn't done when I ordered it. Call up, ring, 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 ring. Hello, Continuity. And it's him. Like, "Oh, hello." And we just chit-chatting on the phone. Perfectly pleasant guy. Just like I called him in his living room. Just chit-chatting away, like, you're probably busy, so could you hand me off to somebody? He's just like perfectly happy to carry on a conversation. And you know what? And you say the things that other people have had the interactions with him. And you say the things where he goes around and tells other creators to up their prices. I'm going to quote the great George Clooney movie, Michael Clayton, when you ask why things like this, because people are fucking complicated. That's why.
Sure. Yeah. If I hated this guy, I wouldn't have gushed about him for an hour, right? It's just...
I can't wait for some creators to die.
I mean, I'm an asshole internally sometimes. I don't have to be an asshole on the podcast to everyone. I can acknowledge the greatness that people have done or done for the industry, even if I have personal issues with them or their artwork. But again, let's another thing, right? Mm-hmm. He sort of becomes a different artist in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. He redoes a lot of his artwork. He redoes those Deadman issues for DC. He redoes all his Batman artwork, right?
Young Kevin's dying right now. Like, you're killing him.
My closest comparison is he kind of pulled a George Lucas, right? Yeah. And you're like...
It wasn't broke. You didn't need to fix it.
Right. And in a similar fashion, I've said, and I firmly believe this, we will never see the original Star Wars until the day George Lucas dies. We've not seen reprints of the Neal Adams Batman, the Dead Man, and all that. I don't believe, right? And even the Green Arrow Green Lantern, was that recolored?
No, that's safe. No, I think that's the one that escaped.
Okay,
because I have the soft cover of it, and it looks fine. Like I had no issues with it.
So he went back and redid a bunch of his artwork, and objectively, it is worse. It is a stylistic change that he made in his artwork in the 80s that he may prefer.
Yes,
but
his argument is, just real quick for those who don't know what this is about.
Yep.
His argument is that back in the 60s and 70s, you're dealing with a limited selection of colors at these printers. You have to account for it being printed on newsprint, so you don't actually know what it's going to look like until the comic is on a spinner rack, because nobody can see it. With advances in technology, finer gradation of colors, and the ability to have a digital kind of preview of it, he's like, well, shit, I wish I could have done this all along. I'm going to go in and do it. That's what it was about. Not just he's bored one day. It's kind of like the Lucas, like, well, I didn't have the technology, so I settled.
Right. But the limitations of the medium are what make the results so incredible. Yes. When you are given an unlimited budget, you shit out a bunch of stuff you don't need just to fill the paper. And look, Brian Boland is amazing. Mm-hmm. And the recoloring of Killing Joke is terrible. I'm sorry, right?
Well, it's the same, like the recoloring of X-Men
bad.
X-Men #1. When they recolored Jim Lee's X-Men #1, it looks
it's bad. Right. So I am hopeful that DC is now going to reissue all of Neal Adams' Deadman and Batman run in their original form.
Well, for God's sake, just do both versions like the Killing Joke Absolute.
If you have to, sure. I'll rip that book in half.
For the life of me, I don't understand why they haven't.
It'll be we're going to release 2 volumes in a slipcase, and everyone's going to be like, well, I got 1 volume in a slipcase.
You can release... Marvel has 3 variant covers for an omnibus. You can have 2 editions. You can have the new edition and the old edition, and that is perfectly fine. And look, and again, I wouldn't go to the guy's face and be like, what the hell, this sucks ass. Like, what are you doing? But it is taking away, again, I have very similar feelings about Star Wars. It is taking away the original product, and you have this new thing that is not why people love the product to start with. This is not what people loved. This is a different thing that is, I don't see how you don't objectively look at it and say this is an inferior product.
Well, for me, the biggest...
So it's...
In Star Wars, to your point, is the X-Wings. the original.
It's everything. It's everything.
But like,
right?
If you're gonna take a solid, the X-wings in the originals were these bleached, light gray looking things that looked like they had been like hand me downs, right? So the rebellion got all of these, but then they redid it, and it's all we're now new. They
didn't digitally take out a hair on the frame, right? I mean, they redid big parts of the movie. Neal Adams didn't just like clean up a little shadow that wasn't quite the same. He penciled and recolored every aspect of these book, almost every element of this book. It is a completely new product that just isn't the same.
Well, so for Charlie, are you still on? Did Charlie have to go?
I think Charlie left, but Toby was supposed to be here.
I see Charlie's little heartbeat line, but I didn't know if he was still here.
Oh, no, Charlie is, I believe Charlie is now fully gone.
So for fans who are like, oh, I'd really like to get my hands on the original un-Lucasized Neal Adams, your choices are basically back issue bin diving.
Which those are getting,
and they're
those are pricey.
extremely expensive.
The X-Men is still safe. You can get that in Masterworks. You can get that in. There was Baxter paper reprints in the 80s that didn't have the recoloring.
Did they recolor for the Epic?
The X-Men's been safe all along. His Marvel work hasn't been touched.
Yeah.
So the Avengers, the Kree Skrull War, the X-Men, safe. Green Lantern, Green Arrow, safe.
In the omnibuses and in the epics, there is a level of touch up and recoloring, but it is standard.
They're not printing it on newsprint, so yes,
right. It is standard cleanup, and some people have issues with that too. Some people don't like
that go bin diving.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, for Batman in the Brave and the Bold Bronze Age omnibuses, that work is close to original.
And the original Neal Adams Batman stuff was not colored, right? The original collections?
No, he redid all those.
Yeah.
But
in all formats, his Batman reprints have been recolored, and then the Dead Man Omnibus too. Yeah. And because the Dead Man Omnibus technically reprints the miniseries Baxter series reprints.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So you're going to have to do some hunting. The Ra's al Ghul, there's a Tales of the Demon trade paperback from the 80s or 90s. It has a Dennis Cowan cover, original art in that. The reprint of the Tales of the Demon with the awesome Neal Adams cover where Batman's like screaming over Robin's body, recolored. So awesome cover, bad interior, so cover, great interior. Just to make this more complicated.
Yeah.
That's okay. If you follow us, we will tell you if they release these and let you know exactly when this is going to drop.
Next item, if it hasn't been announced, next item for the New Year's poll.
Day one pre-order, right? I mean, and again, I don't want anyone to die, but like I was like, this is the only way this is ever going to happen. It has to be some sort of like either contractual or look, this is his wish and this is the way it's going to be, and that's just how it is for now. And it's fine. I mean, whatever deal him and DC have is fine, but I am hopeful that we could get the original versions of these now. I don't want this to come off as me being careless or heartless or morbid or anything like that. But it is like, I mean, that's just sometimes how this stuff works, right? It has been the fact that his Batman and Dead Men have not been available in the original format is a massive hole in the collection of DC comic graphic novels over the last 20 years.
Well, it's not just Batman.
His Spectre stuff is also safe. If you find the Spectre,
the
Spectre Bronze Omnibus has his stories in it.
That's his stuff. Yeah.
Is the House of Mystery stuff he did okay?
Well, that's mostly covers. He didn't do interiors.
It's mainly covers. Yeah.
He may have done like maybe a story or two, but I thought that was all covers.
I wish I could credit the creator on Twitter who had one of the best ideas I've heard in 2022, which is DC should do an absolute of all the Neal Adams covers, not the stuff he did interiors, just his covers.
Oh,
can you imagine?
Cover gallery?
It'd be fantastic. Yeah, because he did 150, 200 covers. He did a lot, so that's a perfect size. Yeah, like Kevin said, people are complicated. There's, I no part of this was ever intended for me to be like, yeah, fuck this guy, slam this guy, he's horrible. No, he's one of the most important comic creators of all time. Arguably, you could argue the most important. It's, again, I think that is a perfectly valid response from a lot of people, especially in the creative end. But there's some stuff that's sometimes a little harder to deal with, and people have had different experiences with him, and if you've had a bad experience with him, it's it can kind of color your view of a person. I've interacted with so many great comic creators, and everyone was super, super nice, and I completely don't remember anything about it. And like the 3 times I've had like bad experiences with people, it is burned into my memory. And whenever I see their name on something, I'm like, you may be good, but
you sound like your dog.
You were an asshole to me in 1995 on day 3 of a convention. When you were probably exhausted and had no idea that your one comment would stick with me for 30 years. Right. That is just how we are. Yeah, you remember the bad stuff. The good stuff is like, it's all great. Hey. So, pretty incredible legacy. One of the most important comic creators ever. Complex person. Just.
Well,
What else? What else can we say?
It sucks. You lose somebody this impactful, right?
Yeah.
Well,
and I think like with George Perez, we've said like, boy, it is.
We're at that time period.
Hard and depressing and painful to see those updates. It's every update I see from his family, from his wife, is a little like, oh God, this is hard. With Neal Adams, it's just like he's just gone, and you're like, oh, okay. I guess we have to process this now.
I didn't even hear about it until Saturday when I was at the shop, and I was just sitting, and I had a moment to look on Twitter, and it's like Neal Adams died. I was like, what?
Yeah, and again, we've had to say this way too many times. All the Golden Age guys are basically gone. At this point, the Silver Age guys, there's not many left. There just really isn't. And Neal Adams is the youngest Silver Age guy or the oldest Bronze Age guy. He's right kind of at that cusp. He I mean, you're right. What we were saying earlier, he is the transition of the entire industry, right? He is the time. He is the point where comics changed. When they bring, it was a bunch of old dudes in suits, and Neal Adams and Denny O'Neil come in, and they're kids, and they just changed everything, right? Mm-hmm. You can look at endless documentaries that DC have done through the years where Denny O'Neil tells, basically that story of them coming in to work at DC, and it's they were the change in everything. It sucks. Support your creators while they're here, and hopefully we continue to get their work republished as time goes on. I assume Toby is listening. He's unmuted. Toby, you here? You want to say something? You good? You joined us? No?
Maybe it's Lane, and Lane just.
I don't think it's Lane.
Dropped.
I think it's Toby.
He's punking everybody.
Well, I was just going to tip my hat to Toby while he was actually here in person for egging me on to get that signature, but I've told him offline, so I'm just going to do it publicly. I mean, I look at that signature in that book, and now there's probably 20 signatures that's bloomed all around that giant one, so it's not just by itself anymore. I look at that signature. I look at the commission I got a couple of years ago. I look at that old Green Lantern book from back in the 90s that he just signed for me for free because I was just a kid walking up to him. And I just I'm glad I have all those things and all the comics to go back and revisit. Because the stories may be dated in some of them, granted, the art is just as incredible and groundbreaking and envelope pushing and modern and fresh as it ever was.
Well, it's still used on merchandise. Like, you can still get like a Neal Adams sticker randomly, or you still see a T-shirt that has, some like his version of like some version of Batman that he's done.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever, Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, kind of the ultimate DC artist, but Adams is, the influence is just cannot be more felt across more creators. They've gone from every corner of the industry at this point. So, yeah.
Hard to follow all that with a new topic.
And I got nothing. Shit's happened, but I figured this is what was going to happen.
Stuff was canceled.
I mean, I still got.
We're going to announce and
million other topics. We'll talk about more stuff later. I expect to have a big episode.
Next week is Multiverse of Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness.
Next week is Multiverse, and I'm probably off the week after. So we'll get to everything later.
It's a lie. It's a lie.
Toby just DM'd me. Can you guys not hear me? No, Toby, we cannot hear you. Are you muted? Your wave line is not going up, which means
no mic.
You're muted.
No mic for you.
No, Toby, we cannot hear you. I can hear you, bitch. Okay, yes. Thank you, Toby. I don't have to also type at him. Oh, Toby, we've missed you so much. We've missed you. Everyone has missed you. We've missed you so
Toby.
much. Can you click the little cogwheel in the top right-hand corner of Zencaster? Is that
this is
there?
Cruel because it's like he's here but not here. It's like just a tease.
It's like
I'm yelling profound profanity is what he just typed to me. So I believe you. I believe you, Toby. I believe you. I will edit in previous profanity from other episodes.
No, just have him call you right now, and you can patch him in through the mic.
I don't know, Toby. I'm sorry. I don't know. This is just exactly how I wanted the Toby episode to go. Exactly. Oh, muted? Unmuted? Okay, he's muting and unmuting himself. No, nothing.
Is it on the right mic?
Can you unmute your mic at all? I hear tapping. I hear clicking. No. Okay, well, great way to end the podcast. Only the best, only the most.
So we had Toby on
high quality
to listen to us.
The most high quality.
Nothing but the best for our listeners, baby.
543 episodes of this, and we still have no clue how to record a podcast properly. It's almost like we
fly by the seat of our pants every single episode.
Well, I've got a couple minutes of outros, so Toby, please continue to try. We are here. We will not stop recording if you get in. You can give us your couple minutes if you can figure this out. Oh, he's gone. Let's see. Maybe he's going to log right back in. Let's see what happens. We have to thank our Patreon backers, Joe Duff, Kelsey May, Craig Anderson at clearpathcoaches.com, Jimmy Rivera at the Social Forum Podcast, and Talon Bray. Thank you all very much for your support, as well as everyone else that supports us at every level at patreon.com/comic conspiracy. Kick us a couple bucks a month. I give to these guys to help out for recording. Give them some credit at the store to buy comics and do whatever. He's trying. He's trying again.
Oh, hey!
He figured it out.
Look at him go.
So what's going to happen is people are going to be like, wait, we're outroing, but there's 45 minutes left of the podcast. What happened?
That's okay. I don't have much to say. Just fuck you, Ryan.
Toby.
Hey, Toby.
I'm very glad you're back on, even if it is for a minute. We've greatly missed you. The fans have missed you.
Well,
I know
all of you, including the Brockmeister. So
I miss you too, Toby.
I'm really missing you guys.
I know our new recording schedule has not been kind to you, but
yeah, man, why'd you change it? Change it back. I'll be back.
I'm barely here. Like every Tuesday is the longest day in the world now. We just can't do it on Tuesdays anymore. It's too much. I'm dying.
That's different from you every other day. How?
It's even worse.
Okay, you're even more dying. I see.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's the problem, Toby. We're processing the books and breaking down the boxes like over the weekend, like Thursday, Friday. No,
so you're doing less on Tuesday, is what you're saying.
No, we have more to do. There's more.
No, it's basically like if we had to do everything on Tuesday, it would take us till like midnight. So we're back to everything except there's also like 3 more days of it. So if you have some words about experiences with Neal Adams or what you think about him, we could definitely have that right now before I finish.
I'm not going to waste everybody's time. I mean, like, look.
No, go for it.
And some of the best covers of all times. And I love the blue gray Batman. Because that's the Batman I was introduced to when I was a kid. So that's I actually to this day still hunt down blue gray Batman or whatever that Batman is called, right? So to add to Kevin's story, it's actually, I mean, sadly that's going to be one of my favorite memories is to egg Kevin on to get that signature. His story is going to be the story I will tell people, and I will, share, when I was egging on Kevin to get that really expensive signature, and he got the really fat one. So I was really glad to be, partially be a part of that story in some small way, because I'm totally going to claim it now for my story. It's too bad. It's. I mean, it came in such a surprise that that was just kind of a huge bummer. But yeah. I like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast. Yeah, I didn't know he was sick. I kind of remember now that he was in the hospital last year, but this does feel a little bit like it kind of came out of nowhere, which is always unfortunate. Well, it's funny because I looked up some pictures and he looked totally fine, and then I think I found some more current pictures. I was like, oh wow, no, he aged a little bit during COVID, a bit. So I was like, wow, that's a huge bummer.
Yeah.
Sad times for American comic book fans.
Yeah. Yep.
So do we need to get like a quick hits of like how did Toby like the Batman and?
I was going to do some notes. I don't have much for you guys, to be honest with you, because I think to this day I have not finished the movie. So I was actually going to do something. I was going to do something fun with the Facebook group guys to give them updates. I was going to do a Batman log or a Toby log, 347 or May something, right? First viewing with Ryan Higgins. It was not good because he will not let me watch it in reverse and stare at him the entire movie. Therefore, I only seen this bits, and then I'm totally getting the Batman experience of it because I'm watching it in pieces. So I'm getting fragmented clues of the movie and slowly putting it all together.
yet, on the third time, I still don't have all the pieces. I'm still looking for clues, and so I feel like
a really bad Memento movie.
No, I feel like I got the ultimate, Reeves Batman, experience because,
Oh, are you gonna cut it? You gonna recut it for us then?
Oh, it may be more Pulp Fiction than Batman if I recut it. So,
well, we have a Multiverse of Madness episode next Monday. If you want to, if you make it through that,
is that movie coming out?
Yes,
comes out on Friday or Thursday.
I'm
right?
going at 10 o'clock.
Look, I'll give you my quick hits on Batman, and this is like my true honest opinion as of right now. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I've watched almost all of the movie at this point. I'm not 100% sure.
Are you at like 80%, 85%?
Well, I'm just not sure, right? Maybe I've seen the whole thing and I just don't know. Like, yeah. No, look, I how do I put this? I like the movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's probably the best Gotham ever shot on film movie. I like that it's a detective story. I think some of the things you guys pointed out too, I enjoy that, that there was, he was working with the cops, yet some of the cops were questioning it. I thought that was interesting and different. I thought there was definitely a different take from everything we've seen before, which is probably the right way to go with it. I thought Catwoman was amazing, which I really thought also. I will say this, though. I think there was missing the hoorah moments for me. Like, I don't mind dark movies, and I don't mind brooding movies, but, I still want the, oh, hell yeah moment. Like, the one moment to really get behind the movie, and I feel like that just never happened in that flick for me. And, there's some cool parts in it, but that part just never happened. Like, I feel like I don't feel like the Nolan movies are necessarily happy movies, right? But they have plenty of hoorah moments for me. Mm-hmm. Like even the Snyder stuff had hoorah moments for me, and this Batman flick just didn't. Which makes my want to rewatch it a lot less, and therefore I also care for the movie a lot less. If that makes any sense. Mm. And it probably is the reason why it's taking me so long to actually watch the whole thing. Look, it's rare for me to not want to rewatch a Batman movie 1,500 times, and this one doesn't make me want to. So,
I mean, it's a commitment.
Yeah, well, I prefer to commit my time to other things. So, yeah, I know. Apologies to the people that love this flick because I don't think I do. Because of the lack of wanting to rewatch it. I feel like if I sat down and want to rewatch something, it's not going to be that movie. So, do I want to see the second one? Probably. I'm not going to say no. I feel like more comic book movies is always a good thing, and quality movies is always good. And, maybe the second movie will make me like the first movie even more. Like that's possible. I think that's very possible with the universe he's created, but right now, I'm not so high on this Batman flick. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure in a week or two we'll talk about the sequel that got announced. So.
Yeah, and then I'll love it, and then I'll totally say I was an idiot and disregard everything I said. Especially if the sequel is all about Nightwing and the Bat family, and all of a sudden Bruce Wayne is aged by, I don't know, 10, 20 years, 30 years, and I get the Batman flick I always wanted to see. No, I actually did not like Bruce Wayne in this at all. Like, look, I give it to Pattinson. His Batman was not bad. I actually didn't mind his Batman at all. I suspected that his Batman was going to be totally fine, but the Bruce Wayne, which I suspected I was going to hate, and yeah, I totally hated it. But yeah, but there's some excellent stuff in there. Colin Farrell's amazing. Yeah, I enjoyed quite a bit in the movie. I don't know. My enjoyment factor wasn't there. So,
well, if you watch it all in a row, maybe it'll make more sense and you'll like it better.
Maybe I'll do that next week. I was an idiot, and it was the best movie of all time, and it made perfect sense when you watch it in order. So,
what movie are you guys talking about?
Here we go. Batman. The Batman. Toby wanted to give us his 2 minutes on it before we.
His 2 minutes on is 83%.
Charlie knows my opinion. I've written it out to him before.
Yeah, Toby, Kevin, and I just have a whole separate chat to argue with.
Yeah. I don't know. What else happened while it was out? I don't know.
Quite a bit. But we do have to wrap up because I actually have to post a podcast.
Okay.
If you guys can't see it right now, but he's fading. Like,
well,
okay.
I am ready. I'm ready to tell you that you should visit comicconspiracypodcast.com. We can find our previous episodes as well as Apple Podcast. And go to comicsconspiracy.biz to pick up some awesome comics you can purchase through there. We are loading up our sales section. We've added tons of stuff in there.
Right now, I already got enough shit to ship out. Can you give me a break?
I actually got to give you a hit list of some covers I'm looking for from some classic comics. See if you come across them.
It's none of that yet. This is all indie stuff, so we're just doing a lot of stuff, adding trades on there, adding single issues, a lot of random stuff.
Can we do like wanted posters in your warehouse? Like
just send it to me.
If you see it,
don't send it to.
Or print it out and put it on the wall, like reward $2 for this cover.
Head over to conspiratorBrock.com. You can find Brock's videos, bonus unboxing videos whenever he gets the time. I know it's been a little light recently, but he'll get back on it.
Hey, wait.
Wander was in the
I ask you something though. Are the rumors true about you?
Me?
Yeah.
He's talking about.
They're all true. Every one of them is true.
Really?
Wanders in the Fourth Dimension podcast is Charlie's Doctor Who podcast.
Wait.
Maybe I'll answer your question in a second. Hold on. Wanders in the Fourth Dimension podcast, Charlie's Doctor Who podcast, talking about Doctor Who. And the weekly interview series Between the Panels at fanbasepress.com. That's where Kevin Sharp does all his interviews with some amazing comic creators. Go check that out. Weekly, fanbasepress.com. And my wife Leanne has her Etsy store at leannehill.com. Sorry, her art is at leannehill.com. Her Etsy store is etsy.com/shop/leannehillart, where you can purchase a bunch of her art. Now, Toby, to answer your question.
Yeah.
You could follow me on Twitter at Ryan Higgins Ryan, but I am off Twitter. I'm no longer using it.
Bullshit.
If that is the question you have,
bullshit.
I have not been on in 2 weeks.
Okay, what's your new release then?
What's my new release?
Yeah, you're like a drug addict, dude. You have to post your shit somewhere.
I have a very long conversation about this on the Geekbox last night. Yes, it is.
The bloody Geekbox.
It is.
Did you get it?
An interesting time.
Smoking? What happened? Did you start in the store?
Have I started drinking in the store? No, I've not started drinking in the store.
I mean, you almost started drinking Monday morning, real early in the morning.
Well, yeah, a little bit different. You could follow Brock at Brock Sager. I mean, you can follow me. I'm still in there. Maybe I will be back one day.
I've been
Who knows?
You from fucking day one. I'm still following you, my friend.
Who knows what the world will bring? Maybe Elon Musk will decide.
So you're telling me if you're posting
some other shiny,
you anymore.
Some other shiny will get in front of his eyes and he'll drop this stupid plan of his, and I can go back on Twitter. Brock Sager. Mm-hmm. He still uses that. Toby's Toby XI.
I'm on there.
Toby never is on Twitter. Neither is Charlie, who is Insanity and Chaos. Neither of them use it. Well, Kevin uses it.
I use it specifically to look for toys occasionally.
I have to bring up something about Charlie's Twitter handle name and his online handle name in general, and it's got something to do with Bryce. There's a little video clip of Mr. Sir Cable. Jesus Christ, I'm getting old. What's his name?
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin saying the words in insanity and chaos.
He specifically says chaos and insanity.
Yeah. He did a total shout out to Charlie. So take that, Bryce. Yeah.
You can also follow Comics Con Store, which is the store Twitter account, which I do on occasion auto post stuff to that from my social media.
Actually retweets me, so I like that account.
I occasionally do stuff with that account. However, it is posting store news and answering questions. I do not browse. I do not doom scroll. I do not retweet random stuff. I do not post Red Sox scores or political stuff on there, or follow Wario64 for all the hockey game news.
He's me a lot of good deals lately. He has to step up his game a little bit.
That's a lot of competition, man. A lot of competition.
Hey, Ryan Higgins.
You can listen to me talk about my the last 2 weeks of me not being on Twitter and my entire social media experience, which I actually thought was a pretty good conversation. And again, there's some deep thoughts on the Geekbox podcast this week, and our good friends over at Manga Nations. They talk about a bunch of video game stuff.
I have to give Manga Nation a little bump because they're about to do the City Hunter stuff. So
nice.
You know, one of my all-time favorite manga/animes of all time, which also has, oddly, a very good Jackie Chan movie, but a very bad City Hunter movie. But also there's a French movie, because the French love City Hunter, so they did their own movie, which is probably a lot more anime accurate than the Jackie Chan one was. So they're going to be covering all of that, so give them a listen.
If you want to send us a question for this podcast, you can at thecomicconspiracy@geekbox.net. Send us questions there, please, and we will answer some from time to time. We always use Patreon. Oh, of course, and patrons can leave questions on the Patreon as well. We have a sticky thread there for Q&A. I have a couple questions, but I knew we were doing the Neal Adams stuff today, so I didn't pull them.
Bring them on.
Toby, but you had a question before we go. You said you had something?
I do have a question. Oh, it's more a comment, because, Brock, I'm usually never with your ideas. But I think a Ryan TikTok at this point will probably be the hottest thing on earth, of him just swearing at us when we videotape him and then we post it on TikTok.
Oh, yeah, his hot takes? Oh, yeah. That'd be great.
Ryan's Tuesdays TikTok. It's the worst thing of all time, but I think I'd actually do that.
No. I'm sure whatever the next thing is, I'll be all over until it's bought
Ryan's by TTT. Ryan's Tuesdays TikToks. Ryan's triple T.
I used to do that shit Ryan says on Tuesdays. Like, I used to do that shit. Oh man, there were some classics back there in the day.
Yeah,
you stopped doing the wall for a reason, I think.
Well, it's different now. Again, Toby, I don't even put the books in it anymore because it takes me 45 minutes to close out all the invoices now, because we have 17 invoices from Penguin Random House every fucking week.
You don't even work anymore, so Brock and Bryce do all the work. No,
I do
it's Marshall
10 times the work I used to do. I used to read comics in the store. That hasn't happened in years.
That just means you're making some money now.
Do you know we have a new employee?
No, seriously, Toby.
No, do you know we have a new employee?
We do? Wait, what? When that happened?
Like a month and a half ago?
Yeah.
The fuck?
No. Yeah.
Wait,
anyway.
Hold on, Ryan, you ready?
No, hold on.
No, Toby, I want to just say one thing. She's great.
Yeah.
No, it's not her. Really?
Yeah.
When does this new person work? Because can I go in from the back and be just walking right into
Not
the
right now. You can't go in right now.
I can't go in right now because we're also broken into over the night, so we have boxes and everything propping up the back door, and it's all blocked off and everything like that. But
it's funny, your store at the new location is never broken in until you had a new employee. I'm just saying.
Marshall specifically said,
"Yeah,
if a loud,
yes, he did. I heard
funny sounding Asian man comes bursting through the back door and is freaking out and has no idea who you are and what's going on, it's fine. It's just Toby."
I don't look Asian, right?
No, I know.
The world would go under if it's no one I recognize behind the counter. I would actually freak out. I'll be honest.
That's what we need a TikTok for.
No. Yeah, if actually, I'm glad we did this podcast because there's going to be that one day I randomly go in and go, "What the actual fuck? Get out the store! Who the hell are you, pretender? What happened to my guy? Did you murder my people? Like, I'm gonna call the police." And the people are like, "This is like the freaking killer. Somewhere there's body parts in the store." Wait, no, are you serious?
Yes.
Oh, Toby.
Wait, how come nobody tells me anything?
It's just, I don't know. I'm just so fucking busy. I don't have time to do anything. Charlie didn't know what we got working into. I apparently didn't tell him and Kevin. Like, I was up at 3 a.m. dealing with the cops. It's been like one of those like 2 years. Like the last 2 years.
He's been working for a month and a half.
It's been crazy.
That's okay. That's probably as long as it's been since I've been on the podcast, and it's been even longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much for listening to this podcast. And like I said, I knew we are going to do the outro. Then half an hour later, we're still going. We are going to wrap up now. Thank you all very much. We'll catch you next week for We'll see next week Doctor Strange review on Monday. So big spoilers.
We'll be watching it. When are you guys watching it?
Sunday morning.
10 o'clock on Thursday at the AMC in Sunnyvale.
Oh, we're not watching it together. Okay, got it.
Nah, I tried to get a theater. It was $550.
Okay.
I was not paying $550.
Divided by like 10 people is that? Oh, that's 50. It's still like kind of expensive.
Yeah, Batman was $299.
Yeah.
All the others have been $299.
No, but Batman, you didn't take any money, so like I'd happy give you money, like so it's not all on you.
Yeah, I could have gotten $20 from everyone. I'm not going to ask people for 50 or 40 or $50.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's too much.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep.
Hey, I miss you guys. I really do. I haven't done this in so long. I don't even know how to do it anymore. Obviously, so
that's okay.
No, I miss you guys. I miss the listeners. I miss messing with the people on the Facebook group. Yeah.
You're still on the Facebook group sometimes.
Yeah, rarely. Like I was going to do that Batman, post, and I totally never got to it. So
that's okay. That's what next week. Next week is for. Go take some time off. Watch Doctor Strange over the weekend, and we'll talk about it on Monday.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.